Welcome to 5 and 5 from the One Stop Co-op Shop, where I discuss 5 key elements of a game in about 5 minutes. I'm Michael Kelly, and today I'm looking at Tamashii, Chronicles of Ascend from Awaken Realms. Disclaimer that I was sent a review copy of this one. I tend to like cyberpunk as a theme or genre, and I've liked a lot of Awaken Realms games recently. How does Tamashii do? Let's find out and get to the list. So my number 5 point for Tamashii focuses on the solo cooperative play, and this is a mix for my taste. On the positive side, each of the classes in the game has a starting card that works for solo or for co-op, and these make the classes feel different. They do give consistent abilities that can help players out, so you get some nice discussion and cooperation. And even the scenario objectives themselves will often have things to split up and accomplish together, so you're going to kind of talk and figure out how you want to make those things work between the players. And also just a quick note that in true solo play, you have a little Jordan bot that helps you out, and that works pretty well as well. They can kind of move around and help you explore faster and those kind of things. But on the negative side, when I've played some scenarios, the Jordan bots felt a bit exploitable, or like they didn't quite back me up the way a real player would, so it kind of affected balance a bit. And another negative is that while you do have some powers that help cooperatively, I wish there was more. For example, the big glaring thing that I feel like is missing from the game is that you cannot hack or in any way affect your other player's enemies. Getting to my number 4, this point is also a mix, and that's the campaign structure and the narrative in the game. So this is a very unique campaign structure for Tamashii. You always play the prologue first, and you always play the Ascend last, but all the rest of these are basically one-off scenarios that you can play in whatever order you want. The only limitation is you must play each of them and win once before you go to the final scenario. And that's going to work for some people and not for others. I do feel the narrative is really disjointed because of this. You'll talk to certain factions and have certain things happen, but then there's like no memory in the game and nothing really pays off from those encounters because, again, they don't know what order you're going to go them in. And then the narrative itself is just a little bit awkward for my taste. The writing is a little odd, which is surprising because most of the Awaken Realms games I play have fabulous writing. My number 3 point is also a mix, and that's focused on the trace mechanic in the game and combat with enemies. And on the positive side, combat is quick. It can be fun when you have a character with cool powers or you have unlocked a lot of nice upgrades. You can do really cool stuff to defeat the enemies. But on the negative side, this feels like by far the swingiest part of the game. Now, you can modify a lot of the die rolls, but the difference between, I don't know, if you have 3 trace and rolling 3 hits versus 1 is ridiculously huge because you have way more enemies. And then the bigger one is this one die will determine how many enemies activate. Now, it is heavily weighted toward a lot of them activating, but if you get lucky and roll a 1 or a blank and none of them attack you, it's exciting, it's cool, but it also feels swingy and makes the game suddenly a lot easier for a round or two. Now, those negatives being said, I will note that the game wants you to be defeated sometimes, and it's not a huge penalty to be defeated once or twice in a scenario. So even if you do get dogpiled by enemies and roll terribly and they kill you, they all go away and you keep on going usually. So it kind of all works out okay in the end. For my number 2 point, I'm focusing on the scenario design and movement and exploration in the game, and this is a full pro for my taste. So there are a bunch of scenarios in just the base game, even if you don't go into the expansions, and each of them has a unique configuration of map tiles, a lot of it randomized. And then my favorite part is that each have a unique deck of story cards, and this is actually super similar to what we did in our own design, Flame and Fang, where you're flipping them over and they're kind of telling you what the setup is and giving you like the special rules you have to worry about, and you advance in different ways. There's a little bit of branching, not too much, but enough to keep scenarios replayable. Like I said, the maps are randomized. They have a ton of variety in what you're doing in the scenarios: defense scenarios, attack scenarios, exploration scenarios, boss scenarios. So far, I haven't found any that feel the same as the other ones, and like I said, there's a bunch of them. So I think it's one of the best parts of the game. And the actual movement on the board, finding locations, using their special powers, trying to avoid the ones that have higher trace to spawn those enemies like I mentioned earlier, it all works together really well and keeps the game exciting and interesting. But for my number 1, I have to get to the thing that drew my attention to the game in the first place, and that is the pattern movement of tokens in the game. If you haven't seen me do videos on it, I absolutely adore the level 99 game Bullet, and this seemed a little bit like, what, cyberpunk Bullet with a narrative? Heck yeah. Because you'll have these tokens going onto your board into your launcher, and you have a certain number of programming moves each round where you can move them orthogonally and or swap them, and you're trying to create these patterns of the same colors in a row or different configurations of colors. And that's already consistently interesting and fun, but it just gets better as the game goes on, because then enemies have patterns that can let you do huge amounts of extra damage to them, make it so you don't even have to fight them at all if you do it well enough. And then you can install upgrades that want patterns too and give you other really cool powers, and you're trying to fulfill patterns on the scenarios to make things happen. Now, does it ever get to the awesomeness of the patterns in Bullet? Absolutely not, because it doesn't have the same complexity and variety in characters and how they work. It doesn't have the whole thing where like the pattern tokens are actually what can damage you as well, but it's still a great system. It's definitely the thing that I like best in the game, and when you get later in a scenario and have a lot of options available to you, it can be really fun. So overall, you might want to check out Tamashii if you like this idea of pattern creation and moving tokens around on a board, if you like interesting solo and cooperative play with some tactical choices, if you like nice varied scenario design. But on the other hand, if you're looking for these sort of narrative adventures that Awakened Realms is often known for, I think that's one of the weaker parts here, and it's not very linear, so it's going to leave you a bit confused. And if you want to see the game in action, I have a playthrough of one of the first scenarios on the channel. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good gaming, and I'll see you at the next stop.